Welcome to Zero Knowledge. I'm your host, Anna Rose. In this podcast, we will be exploring the latest in zero-knowledge research and the decentralized web, as well as new paradigms that promise to change the way we interact and transact online. In this week's episode, I wrap up the year with my amazing sometimes co-hosts, Tarun, Guillermo, Josh, and Kobe. For most of the episode, we take a look back and try to remember what happened in this past year. It's been a rocky, rough ride, and we try to highlight the things that stood out to us and where we seem to have landed. Listening back, I do think we missed a lot of key items, so maybe if you want to tweet at us what you think we should have included, look for the tweet about this episode over on Twitter. Our Twitter is @ZeroKnowledgeFM, and tell us what you would have added to your look back at the year. Oh, also, this is the final episode for the year. I will be taking a few weeks off, but expect us back mid-January with new episodes all about ZK cryptography, research, use cases, and maybe we even branch out a bit further to explore the intersection between ZK and other emerging technologies. But first, we do our look back. I do want to just share a quick note from one of our supporters of the ZK Summit 8 back in the fall, Polygon. Polygon continues to make leaps in zero knowledge. Their technical leads have made enduring contributions to ZK technology, including the CIRCOM language for generating ZK proofs, as well as innovations in recursive proving. Expect more in 2023. For the latest on Polygon ZK solutions, visit polygon.technology/blog. Now, Tanya will share a little bit about this week's sponsor.
Today's episode is sponsored by Mina Protocol. A new era of ZK-powered decentralized applications is coming, and Mina is the place to build them. The team is committed to delivering the most accessible ZK tooling in the space. Mina's ZK apps are written in TypeScript, so you can use familiar tools like NPM, Visual Studio Code, Prettier, and ESLint. It's easy to get hands-on experience building zero-knowledge applications on Mina without having to learn a custom programming language. You can follow the team on Twitter @MinaDevelopers and share what ZK use cases you're most excited about. So thanks again, Mina Protocol. And now, here's our episode.
Today, I'm here with my 4 sometimes co-hosts of this show. So we have Josh Cincinnati, Tarun Shitra, Guillermo Angeris, and Kobe Gherkin, all here with me to talk about this past year. And actually, I hope with this episode that we could do a look back at the year, a look at our current time and what's going on, and a look to the future. It's like the Christmas Carol of ZK podcasts, and we'll see how far we get. This is unlike other kinds of episodes that we've done. It's not super organized, and we're just going to kind of wing it. We did something like this at the beginning of this year, the one we did in Amsterdam when we drank a bottle of tequila, and some of these other like makeshift wacky ones.
God, why did I miss that one?
Yeah, even in prepping this one, as we started to go through the timeline of this year, it's been kind of insane.
Extremely depressing.
Very.
That's one way of putting it.
So maybe to kick off, why don't we start from January? So it turns out almost nothing happened in January when we looked into it. January seems to have been quiet. But on February 2nd, we started off with the wormhole hack.
Ooh. Well, how much was that again?
I don't remember.
Do you remember?
300 million.
Okay.
I thought it was about 300, yeah.
But it was
okay.
300 million at Solana prices then.
Ooh.
And given that Solana is the biggest loser of all layer ones price-wise, I'm sure if we discount it, whenever people give you inflation-adjusted, costs, you also need deflation-adjusted costs. And I think the deflation-adjusted costs here means it's quite a bit lower.
Bear market adjusted costs.
Yeah.
Which is sort of weird because it's like that hack happened and there were all these SPL assets that people thought, oh no, they're not backed by anything in Wormhole. But it turns out a lot of them weren't backed by anything to begin with anyway.
Going on later in February, we had the 24th, Russia invades the Ukraine, setting off an insanity
that's
across
right.
the world. I mean, everything got thrown up with that one. It's funny because like February, one of the other things that happened, maybe this is more show relevant, but Tarun, you and I interviewed Sriram which I feel like set off a cadence of episodes of like Sriram and all of his collaborators that kind of lasted through the year.
Well, the thing is, the direction we went to his advisor, then to his advisor's advisor.
Yep.
Or no, actually, we went to his advisor's advisor, then down.
Right.
We found the bridge. Yeah. We're missing part 4. Anything else? Like, okay, so I'll say sort of on our front in March, we did ZK Hack Mini and a job fair, but like that's Q1. Do any of you have any other recollections from Q1 of this year?
The fund launched, so it was official
okay.
that when I first started.
Oh, that's cool.
That's a happy note.
It's a mostly happy note, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a happy note that the fund launched for sure. I'll give you that.
I mean, I think the key to evaluating any investment vehicle in and around cryptocurrencies in 2022 is to ask whether you avoided all the mines in the minefield, and
Yeah.
I think you did do that.
So yeah, it's not ROI. It's like, did you avoid any negative multiples? I guess.
Yeah. Let's just say we didn't avoid all of them, but it's yeah.
Okay, moving on in the year. So now we're entering Q2, and this is where I have to say it gets very exciting. Well, April, we did the ZK Summit 7. That was really fun. Amsterdam, Dev Connect, people got together.
That was super fun.
Yeah, well, actually, wait, going back to Q1, did anyone go to ETH Denver? I didn't, so for me it didn't register. You did.
Tarun and I went.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it fun?
It was cold.
Okay.
I will say my hot take about ETH Denver, which is there's absolutely no reason to host a conference that has more people attending it than your largest stadium in a city that is like freezing in February.
Yeah.
Outside of historical vestige that a bunch of early Ethereum people were there, so they still host it there. But it's actually like one of the worst cities that you could ever host this event in. Like people were standing outside for like 5 blocks of the conference venue. It was like a disaster. It was like one of the worst organized events I've ever been to. And then you go to Amsterdam, it's amazing.
Perfect.
It was like night and day about how horrible Denver was.
Yeah. Amsterdam wasn't like, it never felt too crazy crowded, at least from my perspective. Like I never really waited. I don't remember like lines, and our event was really smooth.
It was like actually decentralized in Amsterdam. Like there's many different venues, whereas like they like put everything into this one stadium in Denver, and like the line, it made no sense.
Okay.
I think my concern about Amsterdam, I bet the conference was great. I just worry that I'd be dragged out into an unmarked van by the Dutch police and not charged with any crime, but detained for
this all happened before people realized that. For the
we
record.
didn't know that was a thing that could happen then. Oh, how innocent we were. Okay, so we had bridge number 1 fall, although, revamp, Wormhole. Then it was Ronin Axie, because I feel like this is a bit of a theme of the first 6 months, 8 months of the year. It's just like every few months there'd be this big bridge hack.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like maybe the first part of the year was like technical hacks, and the last part of the year was economic hacks.
Other
only,
pillars falling.
Oh, I guess here's another random update for Q2, which is not so sad. It's the first time you and I have met in person, Anna.
Yeah.
It was in Amsterdam.
Totally.
There you go. That's a cute one. There you go. One positive note in a sea of negativity.
Yeah, and that was actually like May in Q2 was my first like post-pandemic actual travel, which was very happy for me. But it was to New York, and I got to see Tarun.
We got
we got coffee.
Hey.
I saw James, and then we actually like a bunch of crypto people went to a really nice dinner while Terra was melting down, which was
actually a thing to recap. Actually, is when we go through each of these events, when you reach an event that's large enough, you have to say where you were.
Yeah.
Oh shit!
Well,
I don't know if I remember
Luna
that.
happens in June, doesn't it? Isn't the full crash
May?
Is it end
it was
of May?
I was at that dinner in May when like it was getting super depegged, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I was at a Mezcaleria in Mexico City when that happened, and everyone I was like, half the people there were crypto people, half the people were Tuluminati shaman type people,
Oh.
and you could see the table, like half the people were just like la 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 la, the world is great. The other half of the people were like, where's the bottle of mezcal? We
It's funny though, Luna for me, like Luna, I don't remember. Clearly, I didn't remember the date. I mean, I remember the impact of it, but I wouldn't know the moment that I heard about it. Although there are other events from this year where I could peg like exactly where I was.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember like frantically, I think, writing a class and then having to somehow incorporate stable coins into it because like everything had gone to shit. I had not been teaching the class right at that time. So I just remember me being like, oh crap, now I have to make slides about this like stupid crash. Just like, damn it, like more work. Anyway, sorry.
I like the way you just put that, by the way, that there was these like technical hacks before. So it really was like the multi-chain and bridging. This became like a very people started to question like, you know, are we pushing this stuff out too quickly? How do you actually make sure that they're safe? Starting with Luna, there's a cascade of other things happening, right? It's Luna's June, like end of May, I guess. 3AC mid-July.
July, yeah.
There is another bridge hack, Nomad, on August 2nd. And it's followed by like on August 8th, and this obviously hit our ecosystem the most, but Tornado happens.
Right.
So that's 6 days later, which to me that's wild.
Fuck.
One reason to hate FTX and SBF is that all the TV shows and movies are going to ignore all the stuff we've talked about so far and just focus on
on Sam.
Yeah, which is like a kind of a boring scam. So
yeah, it is actually relative to everything else.
Kobe,
right,
tell
Kobe?
us how you really feel about what scams are interesting versus not interesting.
I mean, I think the arrest of a Tornado developer is much more interesting. It's not a scam, but it's interesting. It's much more impactful for us, you know. So
It's a governmental scam depending on how you see it.
Yeah,
But you know.
But actually, I guess going back to that was like a very short amount of time. I didn't even realize how close that was.
Yeah.
You know, I remember I got like a haircut around that time, and my my hair salon that I've gone to for like 12 years was like, wow, you got some real pandemic grades. I was like, yo, it's been a year since I was like in that mode. Like, what are you talking about? And like I now when I look back on it, that was like right around
Nomad hack and Tornado. Okay, so this is August, post-tornado. I mean, in the ZK space at least, it sent, I mean, I think it was so impactful, the ripples of that, just like how each team had to find their position on this, on like, do they lean into compliance? Do they lean away from compliance? Like where are they going to position themselves around it? In the ZK space, that's definitely like a pivotal moment. Still ongoing, like they did release... what is it, the FAQs a few months later that clarified a few things, but I don't think we've really seen anyone try to use, like, so basically one of the things that happened with Tornado, and by the way, we're gonna speak in this, I should have maybe said this earlier, but in this episode, we're gonna speak like you know. We're not maybe gonna give all the background, but I will say for Tornado, there are like a few episodes that I did looking at the different aspects. And when the thing first came out, there was so much kind of confusion and almost like overreaction on the part of other projects or like infrastructure projects, like companies, where they started to blacklist things or censor. Like they were basically like anything touching this in any way could potentially land on a blacklist. Or block list. So there was all sorts of immediate reactions. And then after this point, there was an FAQ released where we actually learned a little bit more detail. But even in that, I think there's still so much lack of clarity because it's not really been tested, right? Like I don't know if there's stories of people who've actually gone and tried to petition to get their funds out. Do you know anything about that actually, Josh? Have you heard about that?
Other than that, concerted effort by Coin Center and a couple of folks to bring about that lawsuit, which is not really like a petition to get funds out. I haven't heard of anyone trying to like go that route.
Yeah, because in the FAQ they did apparently say there is a path to do that, but like I don't know if anyone's done it.
Yeah, actually gone.
That's maybe a question to the
if
audience.
they did, would they be public about it?
Yeah, true.
yeah.
Given that they're privacy oriented people.
Fair enough.
What's also crazy about it, it's like this confluence of strange events because that happened right before the merge, right after the merge. I'm trying to
Before, it was like a
right
month
before.
before.
Yeah, a month before, right? And the merge was this amazing, incredible like achievement event in our industry and ecosystem, like really remarkable, right? But then it opened up the avenue for the OFAC level censoring by validators, and it's like, oh great, or sorry, block producers, and it's like great, lovely. We kind of like sped. It didn't feel like a speed run, but it felt like the merge was, we're like really charging ahead with it, and then first challenge up is great. Now we have like some actual like effective nation state level censoring potential, right? In the midst of this, and it hasn't actually affected things too gravely yet because it isn't really that widespread.
Although, just going back, Tornado happens in the beginning of August. What it revealed, and now I'm realizing something, like September and October, a lot of the narrative, at least it started with like, will validators censor? And then it was sort of this realization that actually, at the MEV level, there are these kind of points where censorship can happen in almost an easier way. And that reveal was kind of fascinating. Like that, I don't think we could have necessarily predicted that that's where it would fall, but maybe it's kind of good that we see it at this moment. Like it's still very fluid. There's things we can do to mitigate it.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that happened was that a lot of people started to think about the technical solution, like the cryptography that would solve it. And I don't think the solution is cryptography here. It's just going to delay the end. So a lot of confusion around that as well.
On like how to solve for the MEV problem? Or
so for example,
I feel like Guillermo and Tarun, when I say MEV problem, they're both like, what is she saying here?
It's not a problem. No, yeah. That you would be including transactions that are encrypted in the blocks without seeing them, and then you would be forced to process them, like with threshold encryption kind of stuff. But I don't know. I'm not sure that I'm convinced that that's a solution.
Do you think it's just too far off? Like,
no, I don't think it's technical. It's that big of a technical challenge. It's definitely doable. It's more that, okay, so you're including an encrypted transaction that you can say, oh, I didn't know what I had there. But after a block, you do know, and like you kind of still participate in it. So it's not entirely clear what it means. So,
well, just to play obviously very biased devil's advocate on that. Like, I think one could make the
devil
case...
has bias?
Shocking, really.
But I think one could make the case that if you're running, infrastructure where you're running that infrastructure to participate in an ecosystem in purely legitimate means, but the way that infrastructure functions requires you to participate in a way where you propagate transactions that you know nothing about, or include transactions that you know nothing about in, whatever blocks you're producing. I mean, I think there's a legal defense, but there's also just like a practical defense of like, I'm just running this so I can push my super legitimate, trading transactions. I have a full record. I can give you this view key, et cetera. And you can see that. And you're right that ultimately you still have to rely on people feeling like safe enough in running that infrastructure, right? And that's like on the social layer rather than like the technological layer. But I don't know.
I think actually that I need to be the devil's advocate. I think that's the devil, right? So I think actually that what would happen here is that, someone could say, and again, like I'm not saying this is what I think, but like someone could say that if you participate in that ecosystem, you should have convinced that ecosystem to censor it on the protocol level or whatever,
Yeah, I could see someone making that argument.
Going back to that, Tarun and Guillermo, I mean, you guys were doing a ton of work, and you're still doing a lot of work on the MEV front. But did you already know all this stuff? Were you already like, because you were so much deeper in it? Like for me, at least, like Tornado happens, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh wow, that's what they're doing, and that's what's possible.
I think that's more a problem of like the proof of stake security model, honestly, than anything else. To Kobe's point, right? Like even if it's encrypted, the next block who did it. part of the reason is in proof of stake, you effectively have to register your addresses on each epoch, and so you kind of know who the people are who are going to be possibly selected within an epoch. And that's one of the biggest ways the proof of stake security model is significantly weaker than proof of work, where like this notion of like adaptivity, like people can join and leave whenever, and like you can't really keep track of who's registered to be in the lottery to win the next block. There's been a ton of work on cryptographic solutions to try to make the two equal. The one I like to shill a lot, but like I think is like it's very far from being implemented, is Nicola Greco's single secret leader election. Like basically that would give you a way of like having the leader election be not known, so you couldn't do this post hoc type of analysis. But we're just not. It's like a beautiful paper. It's just that like somehow we're just like not there at like the implementation level yet. I mean, and there are some toy versions of this, but my point is like nothing that's going to be like in production, like running on stuff is there.
Yeah.
But the MEV part is separate than that's what I'd say.
Right. Yeah. At a high level, I think it's less like there is something to be said about MEV-ness because like in whatever in miner servable value, like miners actually do actively include like specific transactions in like some more generic way that isn't just like pick the highest bidding ones, but fundamentally it's more of a problem of like ahead of time that you're going to be picked at some point, so like you better have a good answer before you get there, right? Which is I guess in this case OFAC compliant, but that might not be the good answer here.
Merge happened after Tornado. That's so weird.
Yeah, I think it did happen slightly after, right?
Thought, wow, okay.
I had that internally flipped too for some reason.
Yeah, so it was on. I remember because it was on the day of ZK Summit 8, September 15th.
That's right.
Everyone was late for my event because I stayed up all night. But then they came. Good. Okay, so yeah, the merge happens after, and that's why maybe that conversation started more in September, October.
I don't know, and I feel like in my Twitter spheres, it was like one of the first things that's kind of started getting discussed as like an important consideration or whatever, and like a bunch of protocols were like, "Oh shit, like is this us too?" Or whatever, and a bunch of people started like thinking about self-censoring before doing kind of anything interesting yet.
Okay, did anything else happen in that quarter that you can remember?
Oh, man.
So we're talking Q3. This is recent. This is right before I'd say like one of the biggest ones.
I mean, the 3AC thing was like, the staked ETH, people realizing that a lot of the synthetic assets that they thought were 1-to-1 or not began then. But like ironically, that was like the biggest drop for an ETH related asset, and it was like 8%. And it's like every other staking derivative in the world like looks like the Zimbabwean currency, like in some ways. So like it actually gives staked ETH some credit. It did pretty well.
Okay, so now I guess we'll roll into November or October, November.
When was the time where all the ZK EVMs battled? Who was the first?
Oh wait, where was that? Oh, that was Paris. That was in July.
Okay.
Do you remember this? I mean, I wasn't there, but like during the ECC week in Paris, there was like all the ZK EVMs announced on the same week.
Oh.
I don't know if you guys remember that.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about Paris. Paris actually happened.
Paris
that
happened. Yeah.
Right.
This is semi-chronological, folks.
Did anything interesting come out of that conference? I don't remember. I mean,
ZK
I was there.
EVMs. ZK EVMs.
I guess.
Are any of them, and excuse my ignorance here, but are any of them actually equivalent to the EVM? Or were they just announcing paths toward EVM equivalency?
Well, they're each different. Some are like actually EVM compatible on the opcode level, and some are not. There's arguments between them, which is the more ZK EVM of them. But I think is your question, how far along are they?
Yeah, like were these announcements, were people just sort of bum rushing announcements because they saw like someone announcing first, despite like whatever stage they were in, and like how far along are these actually conceptually?
Yeah, I think aren't they? From what I understood, that announcement week was an announcement week. It was like roadmaps. Yeah. It was not.
Okay.
We have it and it's ready and it's ready to use.
Yeah, it's more like you can try it now and feel the user experience, but it's not feature complete yet. That's kind of...
Oh, really? Close. Wait, even in July, Kobe, would you have said that they were usable?
Do you remember when
Yeah.
2019 was announcement of announcement season? Like every fucking crypto project would like make an announcement about an announcement they're gonna make.
In
So you mean
2022,
this
they
is
just
proof
made
of future
announcements.
announcements without
This
revealing
is the equivalent of that.
announcement.
Oh my god.
Oh, I hadn't realized that, Kobe. I actually thought it was more of a announcements that they were going to do stuff.
Yeah. Most of them announced that there will be something to do soon.
Okay.
Yeah, but not long after. You could have tried it, but yeah, most of them were announcement of
Okay.
we exist and we're the first. So
Okay, so now I'm trying to figure out what happened. Did anything happen in October? Not really, eh? I feel like it was a chill month.
Relatively. Like maybe it was October Celsius, because Celsius also
Yeah, so
like imploded, but I can't remember if it was September or October.
I think we googled it. It was like July or something.
yeah,
man.
Tarun, do you
Was it
remember
really?
Celsius?
Celsius was like pretty close to. I thought it was closer to Three Arrows. They're very
Okay.
similar timing.
We could just look it up, actually.
Although trying to rely on memory is just an interesting exercise, and maybe just how much
It
of
is,
a
yeah, because
cluster
I
this
feel
year
like my
was.
timeline is like super fucked right now. Like
Yeah,
I
me
just
too.
events happened and then kind of like crap. You know, there's
Yeah.
some that I have a good baseline for because they just like affected stuff I was doing like literally at that time, and then there's stuff that's just like, yeah, I mean, it could have happened at some point. Oh, who knows?
When you're going through like a series of unfortunate events happening in a row, time doesn't really like obey special relativity anymore. It's like, is time dilating? Is time contracting? I'm
Yeah, it's a
unclear.
quite
Am I moving
non-causal.
faster or slower. Yeah,
Right.
it's like exactly.
you just like lose causality too. It's like very bad. Actually,
I don't have the
We
tensor math for that, truthfully. I don't think I can figure that out.
So I think Celsius happened somewhere between June and August. I don't have an exact date because
Oh man.
yeah, there's at least the quick survey I just made.
But I feel like in September, October, like FTX was so-called bailing out
BlockFi.
Voyager
Yeah,
You mean
and
robbing
Block-
customer funds?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like bailing out some customers with other customers' money.
Yeah.
Right. That is what I mean.
And it's funny because like FTX was like, I felt it was on the other side of this industry from what I do. It was like
Yep.
stadiums and models and like sports people. I mean, sorry, that's just the marketing part of it. But it was just like, exchange and derivatives and like market making and like these big financial things that like I don't spend time with that often. And I don't know
Effective
that like
altruism.
it seems like a different part of the world. And yet it impacted everybody. Like it swept across all of us, even if you were far away from it.
Yeah.
So where were you when you found out that this was happening? Because I can tell you.
Can you tell me what the day was?
It was November 8th that like it was clearly screwed up. Like November 7th had question mark, like maybe something's happening because they were started tweeting mean things publicly to each other, SBF and CZ.
CZ, yeah.
And I know it was the 8th because we did a ZK event in London and Kobe was actually in London. So
Yeah.
Kobe and I got to meet in person for the first time in 3 years
Yeah.
last month. That was so cool.
Yeah, that was like good timing to fly to meet to visit the geometry offices and like to meet all the team, like right at the time of.
But you landed on the day that that happened. And then we had this party and it was a really nice party. And obviously it's more ZK people. But the topic was like, holy, but like, do you see what's happening over there?
Right. What? Yeah.
Josh, where were you?
I think I was like literally exactly where I am now, but glued to Twitter. Like in my home office, just scrolling, just thinking. I was really thinking to myself, like, no way. There's no way. I mean, I always knew they were a little sketchy, but there was no way that they were like flat out Ponzi fraudulent. I just couldn't actually. I
But we
couldn't
also
imagine that.
We didn't even fully know that on the 8th.
No,
We just knew that they
No.
were in danger.
We sort of knew that.
I don't know.
By we, you mean Tarun?
I think the FTT stuff was way more clear by that point because you could like see all the liquidations and like people getting wrecked. Yeah, like, and the fact that I think it was like, I remember I was going to Mexico for this, like I won't
always in Mexico
disclose
in these
too much.
stories.
Oh, I know. I was in Mexico every year. Something blew up.
Mexican conspiracy.
Maybe you need to stop going to Mexico, man.
Pay me not to go to Mexico.
Yeah, holy shit, dude.
That's where you launched
it was
from.
this particular investor had this event, and they may or may not have had some investment into FTX. And I remember like going there, and everyone was very shell shocked.
Whoa.
And I was like, that was like a very interesting way to do it, because I'm like, oh wow, we're in this like nice resort in Mexico, but like also the world's exploding.
Yeah.
But I remember the FTT stuff was definitely very clear by then, that there was something very weird going on. I mean, the fact of the matter is, for Alameda to have had, what was it, like -3 billion FTT short is like kind of ridiculous, which, you know, that I think obviously that's what triggered everything. But like, I think people realize that some of the public borrowing numbers you could see suggested that like something was wrong on FTX's platform, as well as that balance sheet was just ridiculous. And, you know, I've known Sam since before he got famous, and, you know, he was always someone I personally didn't really trust that much. So I can say I like kind of like Josh was like, yeah, I always thought they're robbing grannies somehow. Yeah, like front running everyone, like whatever pension funds there. I didn't think they were like literally robbing grannies. I thought they like actually used some skill in the middle, but clearly it was like too hard, so they went straight to the. But it's like kind of this like really sad thing, right? Of like, if you go rob someone for $100, you go to jail, but you rob $8 billion, and it's like.
Chilling in the Bahamas.
Well,
yeah,
playing League while you're doing a, you know.
No. Even worse, playing some shitty game that he bought with customers' money.
Right.
Storybook, whatever.
And then shilling it on the puff piece that he had commissioned in the New York Times. My God.
Yeah, how come the mainstream media kept praising those people? That was weird.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was really odd.
I think they've gotten sort of wise to it, but like that first week was ridiculous.
It was so strange.
Depressing.
Yeah.
Over a year ago, when I first heard about SBF and this like effective altruism, giving the money away, I remember I asked you, like, so I had heard about it on a podcast, and I was like, oh, is this relevant? Should we have him on? And your answer was very good. It was basically like, you can have him on, but you're never going to get a straight answer out of him. Like, he's just going to sell you something, and given the type of show I think you want to have, like, I don't think you're going to enjoy it. I don't think it's going to be like nice. And so we never had him on. I'm happy that you gave me that advice.
A fair warning from Tarun is very valid usually.
Yeah.
EA people are very difficult to trust in my experience.
Wow.
Yeah. Because they might take like
that's
a
spicy
Benthamite
take.
approach that backstabbing you is actually a plus net util for some future trillions of unborn people somehow.
I think the problem is like there's this fundamental flaw with like long-termism mixed with this idea that you're like optimizing utility, because like long-termism on paper sounds really good, right? It's this idea that like you should like invest now in things that like last 10,000 years, whether that's for like humans who live then or whatever the environment that's there. But the problem is if you don't give a time scale and you kind of take the like very simple philosophical tenets that like the philosophers who started this in Australia in the 1990s, like Peter Singer, I don't think any of them were so caught up in like the utility function thing as much as they were caught up in this idea of like very simple axioms. Like if you read the original Singer papers on like, say, animal cruelty, the number one thing he focuses on is, okay, if we take the following axiom, which I personally don't agree with, but this is the one that kind of creates all EA in some ways, that like all pain is equal and all pain should be reduced, which, you know, I don't know why you necessarily agree with that, but like, if you agree with that, then they have a bunch of like sort of deductions that are like, okay, that means you should like, instead of buying a can of Coke, I should go buy a mosquito net to like go help someone who's going to die of malaria. Now, the problem is like there's no end point to that set of deductions, and like reality is not infinitely liquid. You can't keep doing this type of stuff forever, or you can't keep like saying we're going to like keep projecting out to infinity before you look at like kind of the harm you cause in local space or local time. And so I feel like what happened was like the Oxford and Dustin Moskowitz grouping of like, Dustin Moskowitz is one of the Facebook co-founders who founded Asana, who's like was the main funder of EA prior to this. And then there's, you know, some professors at Oxford, like Bill McCaskill. They basically like were like doing the whole like, hey, you should just like work at some job that makes a lot of money and then donate all your money. And they like kind of started that ethos. And then it started getting mixed in with long-termism. And like the three of those things kind of without any bounds on what each of them were doing, like kind of became this chaotic system that, you know, led a lot of people who are probably assholes to like suddenly be able to justify anything that they wanted to do via using the tenets of these three philosophies. And I think it's kind of just unfortunate for some facets of it. Like some facets of it actually don't seem so harmful, but it's sort of like you know, Stein's paradox type of thing where it's like you have three things that are uncorrelated, independent, don't really matter, but actually like somehow they conspire together to give you like a worse thing than any of the three individually could give you.
Wow.
And like that's sort of, at least that's my personal retelling of this. And of course, SBF was like the king of this type of thing. And even in 2018, when his co-founder Alameda, who rage quit, and was like, hey, like you shouldn't make him the head of the Center for Effective Altruism or on the board, like they kind of ignored it. So like I hope they die a merciless death as an organization.
Didn't Vitalik say something though where like SBF is a dude who did something super bad, but does that mean that everything that he did needs to also be labeled as bad, or was there anything good?
I think the organizational malfeasance of the Center for Effective Altruism is quite large, that like to the point that you might as well restart. And it gets back to the fact that there's multiple things that interacted here that on the surface individually with some constraints and bounds are individually fine to from like improving the social welfare of humanity, but combined clearly can be used to justify any Machiavellian thing that's possible. I think like, sure, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but like examine whether you had a mutant baby and the mutant baby like grew into like this like monster who pillaged the village. And I think that part is like hard for like Vitalik's view of this, I think, is he was sort of close to that community. So it's like he probably does feel like their aspects are good. And like, sure, I maybe there were some, but I think like the net harm is so much higher that you should really reevaluate what components you're adding together there.
Particularly if you try to instead mash up one of those core tenets with another of the whole cryptocurrency industry, which is like decentralization and individual sovereignty and choice. Like, frankly, at like that level, you should be maybe more focused on putting your resources to work for like local problems that you think could be better served, rather than like try to take on, you know, oh, I'm going to need a couple $1 billion for XYZ to fix this massive structural injustice, when it turns out that's just like a feint for corruption on a massive scale. But I don't know, that gets maybe a little too philosophical.
I mean, in general, if we look at the 2010s and like include the last 2 years, clearly the making the world a better place thing has been the greatest way to like assuage people of any bad action you do. Yeah, whether it's in tech companies, whether it's in FTX's case. I mean, FTX is a much worse case in a lot of ways, but like it's not so different, right? It's like the same ethos, just expanded.
It's really hard to call it effective when you look at it like that.
It's ineffective altruism.
I mean, why is like Kevin O'Leary, that like annoying Shark Tank guy, getting $15 million like effective altruism? Like, shouldn't you have bought mosquito nets with that? Like, we could like go through the list of all the people who were paid off, and it was like, where are the mosquito nets?
hey, it may if it potentially increases your like future reach or something, and then afterwards you can
the mosquito nets in 5,000 years will be bought by the PR you bought right now, right?
Exactly. Like the problem fundamentally is what you're saying is like in a lot of ways the fallacy is like local actions can all add up to the right like global action, even if like on average it's a little screwed up, and it turns out that that's not true, right? Like things that seem locally correct, if you just like do them a lot, turn out to actually give you like very bad results in the limits. I think that the way you said it is very cute, actually, which is reality is not infinitely liquid. I think is the greatest like Tarun quote that like of this, maybe not this entire season, but it's pretty close.
I just think like people don't think about discounting the future, right? Like
but that's a fundamental problem.
That's clearly
right?
like they it's not even they discounted it; they like valued it so much more that like they kind of destroyed the current state.
I mean, it's also the whole thing of like here's the other shitty way of stating it, which is if you have a series that's convergent but not absolutely convergent, you can rearrange the terms to make it any number you want. Right, that's the nice. Classic case. So that you can take the steps in anything you want to actually get the result you want.
And that's how effective altruism looks like effective Machiavellianism.
yeah, exactly. So like fundamentally, like you can any conclusion you want, you just rearrange the steps in the right order, and now you congratulations. You know, that's like a shitty model of it, but that's the high level idea. It's like local properties don't always neatly translate to like these like global ones.
Well, we learned that they don't like reading books according to that Sequoia piece. So I guess if you don't read books, you're not going to know the difference in different types of convergence rates.
I guess I do have a hot take, which is I don't love reading books, but I guess I do read textbooks. I don't know if
you
those
do
count,
read some.
But...
Yeah.
You're not like
zero.
bragging on the internet that you don't read books and that everything should be written in a 6-paragraph tweet thread.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, that was such an embarrassing article. Like I like there's nothing I can say about that. That was just like, you know, there was this whole thing I remember in the last 5 years about how like tech companies and venture investors need to like own their own narrative, and like you can't trust the media. Ironically, I definitely I've never mistrusted the media more than after this FTX thing. But ignoring that, this whole thing of like, oh, like we're going to be a venture fund and like run our own media company. And, you know, like A16Z started this magazine, which I think shut down like recently. And this idea that like somehow it wouldn't turn into like the marketing section of like an old school magazine was sort of misguided. And like, I'm sure a lot of them realize like, the liability from running these media companies is like infinitely higher than the value generated from them. Especially when people just constantly can point to them and say, I can't believe you thought that about this thing you invested.
Yeah. Going back to the press part, like it did seem almost like they had put enough out there. They had enough press and PR people behind the scenes who had made, you know, relationships with the press. So it was like, as it crashed, those relationships were still intact and these articles were still really positive. And they had said all the right things, right? I learned a word, which I tweeted it, but like I'd never heard it before. The shibboleth. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Oh, shibboleth.
Love that word.
Yeah.
Awesome word.
That's a classic. If you're rationalist circles, I think is the
Do
right,
they use
or
it?
post rats, I guess, which I don't know why.
But I had never heard that
Yeah.
word, and I was like, whoa. Yeah. And then it was like it was so performative, and they had done it with that completely like inside knowing, like this is a performance, and then they did it anyway, and then you see it worked to a level until it crashed. So like the press tour that he's basically been doing on Twitter Spaces, I don't know if that's a great thing for him, but
does anyone understand why? Like I just like don't really see the point of doing this.
Like, isn't the main thing is to put himself in a position, like he wants to be seen as incompetent and not malicious. So it's like to go out and to get public opinion to believe incompetence. Like he constantly was like, I just didn't know. I made a
That's
big
the theory
mistake.
I've heard. Yeah.
And then it's a little bit less shitty for him in court.
But like there's so much recorded evidence of them bragging about their risk management skill and their liquidation engine, which clearly failed.
In Congress.
Yeah. They literally said this in a fucking CFTC hearing. Like,
wow.
I don't know. It's just like, then again, the New York Times still writes dog shit about this, like embarrassing dog shit. It's like, I never watched Fox business news in my life or read anything from Fox until now, because
Whoa.
that is
Oh,
the
no.
only mainstream media in the US that's actually covering the facts, as opposed to like, oh, isn't it cute that he's playing a video game during all of these interviews?
Whoa.
Yeah, it's real like accelerated Gelman amnesia, I think, for so many. If people are unfamiliar with that term, I guess listeners, it's this. I think it was popularized by Michael Crichton.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
He because there's this physicist Gelman, I guess, that taught Michael Crichton that like anytime you read the newspaper back in his day and you read something about some new physics discovery and you're a theoretical physicist and you're like, this is so absurdly off base, this is wrong, I can't believe it, and then you flip the page over and without any sense of incredulity you read the international news section and accept it as fact, right? And this experience, this phenomenon, is now, I think, what so many people in crypto who haven't experienced it before are like speed running it as a result of seeing all of this crazy malfeasance and then having that disconnect with what's happening elsewhere in the media. It's not great, not a great feeling.
Murray Gell-Mann is actually more famous for his other invention, which is a quark, but I just thought I'd
yes.
that.
Yeah, that's a way
He's a
better.
Nobel Prize-winning physicist.
Yes,
It's part of the amnesia.
Yeah, and used to run the Santa Fe Institute and stuff like that. So he has a lot more that he's famous for than this. Unfortunately, perhaps this.
I think in the
also
popular
thing.
culture, I think this one is this one wins.
Yeah.
Sad.
So oddly, the FTX SBF crasheroo of November did seem to like push Tornado for art. Like even in the ZK space, it sort of pushed it back into our psyche. We're not like, so I've been hosting a legal group where we were talking about, like, right when Tornado happened, we kind of brought it back to life, bringing together a lot of general counsels to talk about the Tornado issue. And then in the last meeting we had, people were like, well, right now, everything has shifted focus also on the Hill towards what happened with FTX. It's just changed everything. And so it's been kind of fascinating how impactful that was just across the board. I sort of want to continue with our past, present, future idea for this episode. I think this brings us pretty much to the present. I'm just curious, how are you all doing? How are you feeling?
I guess good. I don't know. It's been an insane year in a lot of ways, but like overall it's been pretty good. I guess Tarun and I are working on some like kind of ridiculous, insane paper, which has made me pretty excited lately.
I would shill it as this is probably the best idea Guillermo's had in his life.
It is like far too kind, but thank you. Or not thank you, depending on how badly you think my other ideas are. I guess maybe you think all my other ideas are really shit, so I don't know. Unclear. But yeah, no, it's been good. I think for the most part, certainly about as good as the year could have gone. But
for you, this is your first non-academic job.
This is right. Yeah. Weirdly, I mean,
how has it been to be in the workforce and participating in the labor economy?
Yes, here in the coal mines, like mining, difficult. I don't know. No, I mean, it's fine. Actually, I do the same shit that I was doing as a PhD student. I like to call myself the glorified paper editor of BCC. So, but for the most part, it's been good. I mean, I haven't really it feels like it just kind of shifted to I have more conversations with real people, but I still write papers, which for better or worse, I think it's bad for the outside world to come in contact with like weird academics. But no, it's been good, I think.
But you're feeling good. You have some new work. Can you give us some hint for what this is?
Ooh, I think Tarun has a good set of descriptions for it. Maybe, I don't know. I'll do you want to say it?
We've had all these like vignettes about MEV over the last year of like sort of some theoretical properties you can prove about them. And there's sort of always been this question, at least to cryptographers, of like, hey, does there exist some sort of fair ordering solution? Now, one problem is fair ordering never accounts for sort of, at least the way it's defined in, say, like either the Arbitrum paper or Dahlia Malki's paper, etc. There's a notion of like fairness that doesn't take into account economic fairness. So like, sure, your transactions might get some guarantee about being in a certain order, but I can still sandwich you. and it doesn't like it may not have actually lowered the economic impact at all, and it cost more because it increased the latency of the network, or it made it harder to submit transactions. So there's sort of this like mathematical divide between kind of some of the papers we've worked on, which are like trying to quantify the economic impact of someone reordering your transactions or censoring your transactions or adding new transactions, and the sort of distributed systems papers that sort of make a definition of what fairness is without regards to the economics, but like can't say anything about how much more expensive that such a process is than what you have now. And I think we have a way of doing that and showing that I think a lot of the fair ordering stuff may not work as well as advertised.
So wait, it's a negative paper, not a positive one?
It's negative about fair ordering, yeah. But
Okay.
I mean, it's positive about like understanding like what things you can do and can't do to reduce MEV.
Nice.
And like
That's cool.
versus like just being like, oh, like, yeah, we're going to add in all this cryptography to guarantee certain slight properties about the orderings.
Nice.
Doesn't necessarily like reduce the economic impact. And so the question is like, what are the things that reduce the economic impact? And hopefully this gives some guidance into that.
Right. So the high level like idea is unless you think about the mechanism that you're actually like ordering for, there's always going to be kind of like bad scenarios that could screw you over. And that's the main point. That's the main point that essentially we're showing in this paper is like, other than like, unless you pay a very large cost for doing something, essentially for like roughly like averaging out all the possible like possibilities, you're kind of screwed. There's always like something someone can do to like sandwich you or like add orders in the middle. And it has very weird and deep connections to like a bunch of like crazy theory that like seems totally useless. And maybe it mostly is, but it actually turns out to give you the right description here. For some reason or another, that was like very magical. And yeah.
Cool.
So,
well, we'll have to look out for it. I want to ask Kobe, where are you at today?
So, yeah, I think like things are going well, having fun in geometry. I'm working with good people, smart and good, which is a good combination. And cryptography is always useful. Like, it's not that if the market crashes, then maybe there is less activity on DeFi sometimes, but cryptography is something that you do, and it is going to be effective years into the future. So I think we've been working on really cool stuff, and I think I just checked something. I noticed that one thing that we published was on November 7, like when stuff was happening, and it still got a bunch of traction. Like
It still got traction despite being right. Yeah.
Because people still want to do cryptography even when things go wrong. So
Yeah.
Cryptography, the only real long-termism.
I have been feeling like doing ZK Hack over the last month because like we're recording this right before our last session. It's been really nice. It's like it's really felt like away from the storm and this like cozy community that's just really keen on learning and doesn't care about the stuff out there that much. It was nice. It's like
just want to do cool math. So that's
just want to do cool math. Okay, Josh, where are you at, or where are we at? The real question is actually like, where are we at as an industry? So I think, yeah.
Well, actually, so I can answer both personally and industry wide. Maybe I'll try.
Sure.
Well, actually, two personal notes that I was very happy about in general in this year. One is while I was in New York, James alpha leaked Tarun's eyewear proprietor, which is where I got these sweet glasses from. So I was very excited.
Everyone has good glasses on this call. The listeners can't see that, but
they can't see it. But that's part of the mystery. It's okay.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun, I think.
It is. So that's like good news number one. The other thing that's exciting for me personally, and then I'll go to personal industry. But my wife and I are expecting baby number 3 in April.
Yay.
Josh,
Congrats.
Crazy.
damn.
Yeah, that is it. That done.
You're like, I'm out. I'm done.
I'm out and done. And then, the now the more relevant one to your listeners I think like, so I am finally getting back in the ring as y'all know, but like as others know, and Penumbra has already been shilled so many times in this podcast that I won't re-shill it. So I will.
There's a full episode all about Penumbra.
There is, and it's awesome. I recommend everybody listen to it. But yeah, I'm starting, I get to start a new organization that's contributing upstream to Penumbra called Radiant Commons, and I get to, build an organization like I did with the Zcash Foundation. So it's really exciting for me personally to be doing that. But I also think, and this I think really actually flows into why this is a great moment for us as an industry, despite all of the negative news, or maybe even because of it. So the Tornado Cash stuff, I think actually my experience has been it's really emboldened privacy advocates. It's like demonstrated how much more important it is for us to be pushing the envelope on that. And that's certainly been, I think, the view of Penumbra supporters and people that are interested in that protocol. But I think even more broadly than that, right? And part of that story, I think, is also the idea that like we can build protocols and primitives that prevent an FTX style collapse, right? That if we're building protocols that give people fully auditable, cryptographically auditable measures about the state of markets without having to rely on centralized providers and their trust me bro approach to collateralization, like that's great. And I think that's really where I think a lot of people in the industry are very excited about the next couple of years, despite the bear market, is like, all right, we had our like fun yield farmy DeFi summer thing a couple of years ago. And now we're actually going to like kind of go back to our roots about how we can actually like demonstrate that these systems are measurably better than the horse shit that has been viewed as like the crypto to all these other people, right? So that actually excites me a great deal.
Cool, I like that. Something I just want to note, because I know we actually have to wrap up in like 3 minutes, because Guillermo, you have to leave. But we didn't get to the future.
You can continue without me. It's totally fine.
Well, no, but here's an idea. What if we reconvene in the new year to talk about the look forward? Ooh. We might also have have had a little bit of time off, which might not like.
Hopefully Genesis doesn't explode by that. That's all I gotta say.
Genesis, Binance, Tether, stay strong.
Oh yeah, but Genesis, Binance. Yeah, well, sorry. Hopefully we walk into Christmas with like, we made it. But like, it might not be true.
Just FYI, this airs on the 21st. So yeah, we still have a week before. Anyway. Tarun, we didn't really get to you. I do want to ask, how are you today? What is the state of things as it stands today? And then, we'll finish this episode in a way, part 2, in the future.
I feel like there were all these memes in 2018 when I was like first really like full-time paying attention to crypto that had all these people who were like, there was these like 3D memes of like these like molten blue alien things holding bags, and they were like walking over lava, and like they were melting, and they were like, it was supposed to be like bag holders melting, like not making it across the pit. And then at the end there were like the 3 survivors, and the 3 survivors were like Bitcoin, ETH, and I forget what the third one was, like Tether or something else. So I feel like I've made it to the survivor thing, provided nothing else blows up. But also, just like definitely motivated by the research progress lately. I feel like it was a lot. It was actually quite hard to get a lot done between 3 Arrows and FTX. But I feel like once the big one blew up, it was like, all right, I can finally like, because like otherwise you're kind of like, what's gonna blow up next? What? And like it kind of influenced how well you could like think freely.
Yeah.
At least for me.
You do have one on your mind though now. Hey.
Yeah, but these ones at this point, I'm like, whatever. I can't do anything.
Cool. Thank you to all 4 of you for joining. And thank you also for being my sometimes co-host over the year. It's been so fun doing interviews with all of you.
It was.
It's super fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to reconvene beginning of next
I'm
year.
I'm going to make one prediction.
Oh, okay. Make one prediction.
Which is next year, the ZK podcast is going to have a lot of episodes on ZK and its intersection with machine learning.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was MEV. Yeah. I'm disappointed in you. Never mind.
No, I think like 2023, bear market will be the time we talk a lot about that. That's my guess.
I think that's
Yeah.
definitely possible. What a year. Wild.
Yeah, really.
Hey, we're all alive
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
and not doing Twitter Spaces every 5 minutes.
Although, thank you for joining the one I did a little while ago, Tarun. I appreciate it. It was
Oh
fun.
yeah. Well, that's different than these ridiculous.
Oh, yeah,
circus-
these,
I feel like this
let's
is
watch
like the
SBS squirm.
1920s or 30s like show trials, but like
Oh, totally.
in reverse, like an inverse show trial. I don't know.
I really want to
So-
do a parody space where, like, I'm role playing SBF and someone is pretending to be an interviewer. I feel like that would actually be a lot of fun.
I think James should interview you.
That would be great. Actually, I'll text James. That would be really fun. I've been trying to get someone to do that because I just feel like this is ridiculous. Like, we need to stop giving him airtime.
You do good impressions too, but SPF impressions just involve a lot of like,
Yeah. Well, and then I need a mechanical keyboard.
No.
as
You need a
prop.
mechanical. There, you have to like do that every once in a while. Mechanical keyboard.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
true.
And then, like, repeating the question under my breath,
Mhm.
saying I'm still putting the pieces together. A lot
Yeah,
of that, just over and over and over again.
yeah. Before I sign off, I just want to let you know that I'm going to be taking a little break. We won't have episodes coming out for the next 3 weeks, and we'll be returning mid-January, probably with the Looking Forward at 2023 episode. So looking forward to seeing everyone there. I also want to say a big thank you to the podcast team, Henrik, Tanya, and Rachel, and to our listeners. Thanks for listening.